In a quiet suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of town, where maple trees lined the streets and friendly neighbors knew each other by name, lived a bright-eyed 7-year-old boy who had always been fascinated by police officers. Every morning, he would stand by his living room window, watching the patrol cars drive by, dreaming of the day he could become one of these everyday heroes. His parents had noticed their son's growing interest in law enforcement, especially after he started collecting toy police badges and pretending to solve mysteries around their home. What made him different from other children his age wasn't just his passion for police work, it was his extraordinary capacity for empathy and kindness that set him apart. One particularly hot summer afternoon, while playing in his front yard, he noticed something that troubled his young heart. A police officer had parked his patrol car across the street, and even from a distance, the boy could see that the officer looked tired and overwhelmed. The officer had been working double shifts all week due to staff shortages at the local precinct, something the boy would later learn. Without hesitation, the young boy rushed inside his house, his mind already formulating a plan. His mother, who had been preparing lunch in the kitchen, was surprised to see him burst through the door with such urgency. "Mom," he called out, his voice filled with determination, "can we make some lemonade? And maybe pack some of those cookies you baked yesterday?" His mother, touched by her son's thoughtfulness, agreed immediately. Together, they prepared a care package that would soon spark a chain of events nobody in their community could have predicted. As they squeezed fresh lemons and measured sugar, the boy shared his observations about the hard-working officer with his mother, his words reflecting wisdom beyond his years. What started as a simple act of kindness, bringing refreshments to one tired officer, would soon transform into something much bigger. The boy didn't know it yet, but his small gesture would not only brighten one officer's day but would also inspire an entire police department and community to remember the power of simple human kindness. With careful hands, they packed the homemade lemonade in a thermal container and arranged the chocolate chip cookies on a paper plate. The boy insisted on writing a note, his childish handwriting forming the words, "Thank you for keeping us safe," on a piece of paper decorated with hand-drawn police cars and stars. As they prepared to walk across the street, neither the boy nor his mother realized that this moment would become the beginning of an extraordinary story that would touch hearts across their entire community. The officer sitting in the patrol car had no idea that his difficult day was about to change dramatically, all because a young boy had noticed his fatigue and decided to do something about it. The summer breeze carried the sweet scent of fresh lemonade as the boy, accompanied by his mother, began their short but meaningful journey across the street. His heart pounded with excitement and a touch of nervousness, but his steps were steady, driven by the pure desire to help someone who helped others every day. The police officer was completing paperwork in his patrol car when a gentle tap on the window caught his attention. Looking up, he was surprised to see a small boy standing there with his mother, holding what appeared to be a care package. The officer rolled down his window, and the summer heat was immediately replaced by the sweet aroma of fresh-baked cookies and homemade lemonade. The boy, suddenly feeling shy in the presence of his hero, extended his arms with the offerings. His mother gently encouraged him, and he found his voice, "I saw you looked tired, sir. We made you some lemonade and cookies." The officer's tired eyes softened as he accepted the unexpected gift, noticing the handwritten note attached to it. As he read the child's message, something changed in the officer's demeanor. The exhaustion that had been weighing him down seemed to lift slightly, replaced by a warm smile that reached his eyes. After 12 years on the force, this simple act of kindness touched him deeply, reminding him exactly why he had chosen this profession in the first place. The officer stepped out of his car to properly thank the boy and his mother. He crouched down to the child's level, his badge catching the afternoon sunlight. "This means more to me than you could ever know," he said, his voice slightly cracking with emotion. "Sometimes we forget that people notice us, that they care about what we do." Back at the precinct later that day, the officer couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. During the shift change briefing, he shared the story with his fellow officers. He pulled out the carefully preserved note, now slightly crumpled from being read multiple times throughout his shift. As he passed it around, his colleagues were visibly moved by the pure intention behind the gesture. The story quickly spread through the department, touching hearts and lifting spirits. In a job where they often saw the darker side of humanity, this reminder of innocence and kindness was like a breath of fresh air. The precinct captain, a veteran of 25 years, was particularly moved when he heard about it. That evening, during a casual conversation over coffee, one of the officers had an idea. "What if we did something special for this kid?" he suggested. He reminded us that small acts of kindness matter. Maybe we should show him how much his gesture meant to all of us. The suggestion sparked immediate enthusiasm. Officers began sharing ideas, each one building on the last. They wanted to do something meaningful, something that would show this young boy that his compassion had made a real difference in their lives. The planning began in earnest, with officers volunteering their off-duty time to make it happen. What they didn't know was that the boy had gone to bed that night feeling like he had done something truly important. He had helped someone who helped others, and that thought made him happier than any toy or game could. As he drifted off to sleep, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had made a difference in the officer's day. Little did he know that his simple act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would soon surprise him in ways he couldn't imagine. The police department was preparing something special, and the entire community was about to learn a powerful lesson about how a child's pure heart could touch and transform an entire city. The next few days at the police department were filled with an excitement that hadn't been felt in years. Officers from different shifts came together during their free time, pooling ideas and resources to create something special for the boy who had touched their hearts. The precinct buzzed with activity as they worked to organize what they hoped would be an unforgettable surprise. The department's community outreach officer had an idea that quickly gained traction. "What if we make him an honorary junior officer for a day?" she suggested during their planning meeting. "But let's make it more than just a badge and a certificate. Let's show him what it really means to be part of our law enforcement family." Word of their plans began spreading through the department, and soon, officers who weren't even working that day were volunteering to help. The K-9 unit offered to bring their friendly police dogs for a special demonstration. The motorcycle division wanted to showcase their bikes. Even the dispatch team, usually hidden behind the scenes, wanted to be involved in making this day special. The local businesses, hearing about the department's plans through the grapevine, started reaching out too. The owner of the neighborhood diner offered to cater lunch for the event. A local clothing store volunteered to create a custom-sized police uniform for the boy. The community's response was overwhelming, all because of one child's simple act of kindness. Meanwhile, the boy went about his daily routine, unaware of the ripple effect his gesture had created. He continued to wave at every police car that passed by his house, his enthusiasm never wavering. His parents noticed how he had started doing more random acts of kindness, helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries, sharing his lunch with a friend who forgot theirs, and picking up litter in the park. One evening, while the boy was doing his homework, the original officer who had received his lemonade and cookies stopped by the house. He asked to speak with the boy's parents privately. As they talked in the kitchen, the officer shared the department's plans, watching as the parents' eyes welled up with happy tears. They agreed to keep it a secret, knowing their son would be overjoyed by the surprise. The police department's plan was set for the following Saturday. They coordinated with other emergency services to ensure adequate coverage while many officers participated in the event. The chief of police himself insisted on being present, saying that this was exactly the kind of community connection they needed to foster. As the plans came together, something remarkable was happening within the department itself. Officers who had grown somewhat cynical over years of service found themselves remembering why they joined the force in the first place. The boy's simple act of kindness had sparked a renewal of spirit throughout the entire department. The night before the big surprise, officers stayed late at the precinct, decorating and preparing everything. They wanted every detail to be perfect. The boy's handwritten note had been framed and would be hung in a place of honor in the precinct's main hallway, serving as a daily reminder that even the smallest gesture of kindness could make a significant impact. None of them could wait to see the look on the boy's face when they would show up at his door the next morning. They had planned something that would not only thank him for his kindness but would also show him and the entire community that compassion and care were the foundation of true public service. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect for what was about to unfold. The boy woke up at his usual time, unaware that this ordinary weekend was about to become the most extraordinary day of his young life. As he sat at the kitchen table eating breakfast, his parents exchanged knowing glances, their hearts racing with anticipation of what was to come. Outside, the neighborhood was quietly coming to life. Neighbors who had been discreetly informed about the upcoming surprise were positioning themselves near their windows or finding reasons to do early morning gardening. They didn't want to miss what was about to happen on their usually quiet street. At the police station, dozens of officers gathered in the briefing room for final preparations. They had arrived early, many coming in on their day off, polishing badges and pressing uniforms to perfection. The chief stood before them, going over the plan one last time, though everyone had memorized their parts through sheer excitement. "Remember," the chief said, his voice filled with warmth, "today we're not just thanking one little boy. We're showing our community what it means to be part of something bigger than ourselves." The K-9 unit officers were giving their dogs one last grooming, while the motorcycle division officers checked their bikes one more time, making sure they gleamed in the morning sun. Back at the house, the boy's mother asked him to help her water the front garden, a careful ploy to ensure he would be outside at just the right moment. As he happily helped with the watering, the distant sound of sirens caught his attention. Unlike usual police sirens, these seemed different, almost musical, like a celebration. The sound grew closer, and suddenly, around the corner came the most amazing sight, a parade of police vehicles, lights flashing in a rainbow of colors, sirens playing a cheerful tune rather than their usual urgent wail. Leading the procession was the officer who had received the boy's thoughtful gift that summer afternoon, now standing through the sunroof of his patrol car, waving with a broad smile. The boy stood frozen, the watering can slipping from his hands as he watched in astonishment. Behind the lead car came motorcycle officers in perfect formation, their bikes gleaming in the morning sun. Then came the K-9 unit vehicles, with friendly police dogs barking excitedly through open windows. Each vehicle was decorated with blue and white streamers, and officers were waving and smiling as they passed. The procession came to a stop right in front of the boy's house. The neighborhood had come alive, with people emerging from their homes to witness the spectacle. The boy's eyes grew wider as officers began stepping out of their vehicles, forming two neat lines leading to his front yard. The police chief emerged from the last car, carrying something in his hands that glinted in the sunlight. The original officer approached the boy, who was still standing in shocked silence next to the forgotten watering can. Kneeling down to meet the child's eyes, he smiled warmly. "You know," he said, his voice carrying in the morning quiet, "a few weeks ago, you saw an officer who needed kindness and didn't hesitate to help. Today, we want to show you what that simple act of kindness means to all of us." As the boy looked around at all the smiling faces, his own face lit up with a mix of surprise, joy, and wonder. His parents stood on the porch, his mother wiping happy tears from her eyes, his father standing proud with an arm around her shoulders. This was just the beginning of a day that would change not only this little boy's life but would become a story told in police briefing rooms and around dinner tables for years to come. The police chief stepped forward, holding what appeared to be a small uniform perfectly sized for the young boy. The morning sun caught the badge pinned to it, making it sparkle like a star. The crowd of neighbors fell silent as the chief cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the front yard with warmth and dignity. "Young man," he began, "in my 30 years of service, I've learned that being a police officer isn't just about enforcing laws. It's about having a heart big enough to care for our community. A few weeks ago, you showed us what that truly means." The boy listened intently, standing a little straighter with each word. The chief continued, gesturing to the officer who had received the original act of kindness. "Officer Pete here told us how you noticed he was having a tough day and, without hesitation, decided to help. That's exactly what we look for in our finest officers, the ability to notice when someone needs help and the courage to do something about it." The boy's eyes widened as the chief held out the small uniform. It was complete with a real police cap, a shiny badge that read Junior Chief of Police, and even a small nameplate with his name engraved on it. As his trembling hands reached out to accept the uniform, the assembled officers broke into applause, their faces beaming with genuine joy. His mother stepped forward to help him put on the uniform over his clothes, her fingers slightly shaking as she buttoned up the shirt. The fit was perfect, and as she stepped back, the transformation was remarkable. The boy stood there, no longer just a kind-hearted child, but now an honorary member of the police force. The K-9 unit officers brought forward their dogs, who sat obediently as the boy was officially sworn in. Raising his right hand, he repeated the special junior officer's oath, his voice growing stronger with each word, "I promise to be kind, to help others, and to make my community a better place." The oath had been specially written for him, focusing on the very qualities he had already demonstrated. After the ceremony, the officers had another surprise. They had transformed several patrol cars into interactive learning stations. At one car, an officer demonstrated how the radio system worked, letting the boy send out a special message that was received by all units in the area. The responses that came back were full of warmth and welcome for their newest junior officer. The K-9 unit officers showed him how they trained their dogs, even letting him give some basic commands to one of the gentler police dogs. The boy's face lit up with pure joy as the dog followed his instructions, sitting and offering a paw on command. The bond between the officers and their four-legged partners was something special to witness. The motorcycle division had set up a stationary police motorcycle, perfectly safe for the boy to sit on while officers explained how they used their bikes to help keep the community safe. They even let him press the button for the siren, just once, which made him laugh with delight. Throughout all of this, news had spread through the town, and more people began gathering to witness the heartwarming scene. Local residents brought chairs and refreshments, turning the event into an impromptu community gathering. The boy's simple act of kindness had somehow transformed into something much bigger, a reminder of how a community could come together and how the smallest actions could create the biggest ripples. As the morning activities continued, no one could miss the look of pure happiness on the boy's face. He moved from station to station, absorbing everything with wide-eyed wonder, asking thoughtful questions that made the officers smile. This was just the beginning of his special day, and there were still more surprises to come. As the morning transformed into early afternoon, the police department's surprise continued to unfold in ways that amazed everyone present. The officers had arranged for a special tour of their dispatch center, and they all drove in procession to the station, with the boy riding in the front passenger seat of the lead patrol car. His parents followed close behind, still overwhelmed by the outpouring of appreciation for their son's simple act of kindness. Inside the dispatch center, the boy discovered the heart of police operations. The dispatch team had decorated their usually serious workspace with welcome banners and blue balloons. The lead dispatcher, who had been coordinating emergency responses for over 2 decades, stepped away from her station to show him how their sophisticated communication system worked. "This is where we first hear about people who need help," she explained, adjusting her headset to let him listen to the regular radio traffic. "Just like you noticed an officer who needed kindness that day, we listen here for people who need assistance." The boy nodded solemnly, understanding the importance of their role. The dispatchers had prepared a special demonstration, coordinating with officers in the field to show how they responded to calls. The boy watched in fascination as computer screens lit up with information and radio calls came in from patrol cars. They even let him use the radio to dispatch a mock call, with officers responding professionally but with warm smiles in their voices. Meanwhile, the station's break room had been transformed into a celebration space. Local businesses had continued to show their support, with the neighborhood diner providing a feast fit for law enforcement's youngest honorary member. The owner had even created a special, Junior Chief's sandwich, which would become a permanent menu item, inspired by the boy's favorite ingredients. During lunch, officers shared stories about what had drawn them to law enforcement, many speaking about moments of kindness they'd experienced or witnessed throughout their careers. The boy listened intently. His own simple act of kindness now woven into the larger tapestry of community service and caring. The afternoon brought more surprises. The department's forensics team had set up a kid-friendly demonstration of their work, showing how they solved mysteries using science. They let him dust for fingerprints and look through a real microscope, turning learning into an adventure. The boy's natural curiosity shone through as he asked thoughtful questions that impressed even the veteran investigators. One of the most touching moments came when the officers revealed a special wall they had created in the station's main hallway. They called it the Kindness in Action wall, and at its center was the boy's original handwritten note, professionally framed. Around it, they had started adding other stories of community kindness, creating a lasting reminder of how small actions could make a big difference. The station's usually serious briefing room had been converted into a mini police academy for the afternoon. Officers took turns teaching the boy basic safety tips, first aid awareness, and the importance of helping others. They made learning fun, incorporating games and demonstrations that had everyone laughing and enjoying themselves. What made the day even more special was how the officers treated him not just as a child to be entertained, but as someone who had taught them something valuable. They listened to his ideas about how police officers could help the community, some of them jotting down notes when he made particularly insightful suggestions about making people feel safe and cared for. As the afternoon activities continued, news crews began arriving at the station, drawn by the heartwarming story spreading through social media. The boy's simple act of kindness was about to reach far beyond their small community, touching hearts across the country. Yet he remained unchanged by the attention, still focused on learning everything he could about how to help others, just as he had done that summer day with a simple glass of lemonade. As the afternoon progressed, something remarkable began happening outside the police station. Word of the day's events had spread rapidly through social media, with local residents sharing photos and videos of the morning ceremony. The story of the boy's initial act of kindness and the police department's heartfelt response struck a chord with people far beyond their small community. Local news reporters who had arrived earlier were now joined by crews from major networks, all drawn to this genuine story of compassion and community connection. The police chief, however, made sure to shield the boy from overwhelming attention, ensuring that his special day remained focused on learning and joy rather than publicity. Inside the station, the boy was oblivious to the growing media presence as he participated in one of the day's most meaningful activities. The department had set up a special project where officers and community members could write down their own promises to perform acts of kindness, inspired by his example. The wall quickly filled with colorful notes, each one representing a commitment to make the world a little better. One elderly resident wrote about starting a neighborhood watch program that would check on seniors living alone. A local teacher promised to create a kindness initiative in her classroom. Even tough veteran officers found themselves sharing personal pledges to be more observant of their colleagues' well-being, just as the boy had noticed their tired colleague that summer day. During a quiet moment, the original officer who had received the lemonade pulled the boy aside for a conversation. "You know," he said, sitting down at eye level with him, "that day when you brought me lemonade, I was having one of the toughest weeks of my career. Your kindness reminded me why I wear this badge." The officer's voice carried the weight of genuine emotion as he shared how that simple gesture had helped him rediscover his passion for serving others. The story's reach continued to expand through social media. Police departments from neighboring cities began calling, asking about starting similar community connection programs. The hashtag Lemonade Kindness started trending, with people sharing their own stories of small acts that had made big differences in their communities. What made the story particularly powerful was its simplicity. In a time when news often focused on division and conflict, here was a pure example of how communities could come together. The boys' uncomplicated act of kindness had unleashed a wave of goodwill that seemed to be exactly what people needed to hear about. The local city council, moved by the day's events, announced plans to establish an annual Community Kindness Day, inspired by the boys' actions. They envisioned it as a day when residents and first responders could come together to strengthen their community bonds through simple acts of kindness and understanding. As the afternoon wore on, more community members arrived at the station, each bringing their own stories of how the day's events had inspired them. A local business owner decided to start a program providing free meals to first responders. A group of high school students proposed creating a junior police academy focused not just on law enforcement but on community service and empathy. Throughout all of this activity, the boy remained remarkably grounded, more interested in learning about police work and helping others than in the attention his story was receiving. His parents watched with proud amazement as their son's simple act of kindness continued to ripple outward, touching more lives than they could have imagined. The police department's social media accounts were flooded with messages from around the country, with people asking how they could start similar initiatives in their own communities. What had begun as one child's response to seeing someone in need was transforming into a movement about the power of noticing others and taking action to help. As the sun began its descent in the late afternoon sky, the impact of the day's events continued to grow in unexpected ways. The police station, usually quiet by this time, was filled with the buzz of activity as community members came together to discuss how to turn this single day of kindness into lasting change. In the station's conference room, now decorated with children's thank you drawings that had been pouring in all day, the police chief sat down with community leaders to discuss a new initiative. Inspired by the boys' ability to notice and act when someone needed help, they began planning a program that would pair officers with local schools to teach children about empathy, community service, and the importance of looking out for one another. The boys' parents, sitting in on the meeting, shared how their son had always been observant of others' needs, but they never imagined his simple gesture would spark such a movement. He just wanted to help someone who looked tired, his mother explained, her voice soft with emotion. He didn't do it for recognition or reward. He did it because he saw someone who needed kindness. Outside in the main hall, officers were busy setting up a new community bulletin board next to the Kindness in Action wall. This board would become a place where residents could post both offers to help and requests for assistance, creating a physical hub for community connection. The idea had come from one of the dispatchers, who realized that sometimes people wanted to help but didn't know where to start. The boy, still in his junior officer uniform, was now helping the department's community outreach team sort through the hundreds of messages that had come in through social media. People from across the country were sharing their own stories of police officers who had shown them kindness, or times when small acts of compassion had made big differences in their lives. One message particularly touched everyone's hearts. It came from a police department in another state, describing how they had started having their officers carry small care packages in their patrol cars, inspired by the boys' lemonade gesture. These packages, containing water, snacks, and basic necessities, would be given to people they encountered who might need a little help or kindness during their day. Local businesses continued to step up in meaningful ways. The owner of a printing company offered to create free "Kindness Starts Here" stickers for police cars. A technology company proposed developing an app that would help connect community members with opportunities to help others. Even the smallest shops found ways to contribute, with one cafe starting a "Pay It Forward" program for first responders. The most significant development came when the State Police Academy announced they would be incorporating a new module into their training program. Dubbed the Community Kindness Initiative, it would emphasize the importance of small acts of compassion in building community trust and connection. They invited the boy to help launch the program, recognizing that sometimes the best teachers are those who lead by simple example. As evening approached, the boy sat in the chief's office, his legs dangling from the big chair as he shared his thoughts about the day. "I just think everyone should help when they can," he said simply, playing with the badge on his junior officer uniform. "It's not hard to be kind." The chief looked at the wall of commendations behind his desk, awards gathered over decades of service, and realized that none of them carried quite the same weight as the lesson this young boy had taught them all. Sometimes the most powerful changes start with the simplest actions, and the most profound wisdom comes from the purest intentions. News outlets were now reporting that police departments across the country were starting to receive their own unexpected acts of kindness from community members, proving that compassion was indeed contagious. The ripple effect of one boy's thoughtful gesture was becoming a wave of positive change, reminding everyone that the strongest bonds between police and community are built on simple human connection. 1 month after that remarkable day at the police station, the changes sparked by a simple glass of lemonade had taken root in ways no one could have predicted. The boy's story had become more than just a viral moment, it had transformed into a lasting movement that continued to inspire positive change throughout the community and beyond. The police station's "Kindness in Action" wall had grown so much that it now extended down an entire hallway, with new stories being added daily. Officers reported that the simple act of walking past these stories each morning changed how they approached their duties, reminding them that their job was about more than enforcing laws, it was about being part of the community they served. The boy, who had returned to his normal routine, still stood by his window each morning to wave at passing patrol cars, but now the officers would wave back with genuine warmth, many of them keeping small acts of kindness as part of their daily patrol routine. Some carried extra water bottles for people they met on hot days, while others took moments to chat with elderly residents or help kids cross the street safely. The community kindness program, inspired by his actions, had already been implemented in several local schools. Children were learning that being a hero didn't always mean doing big things, sometimes it meant simply noticing when someone needed help and taking action. The program's success had attracted attention from educational institutions across the country, with many adapting the curriculum for their own communities. Local businesses reported a noticeable change in the community's atmosphere. The "Pay It Forward" initiative had spread from the original cafe to dozens of other establishments. People were more likely to hold doors for each other, help carry groceries, or offer assistance to strangers in need. The city had become a place where kindness was not just appreciated but expected. The police department's new training module, emphasizing community connection and empathy, had graduated its first class of officers. These new graduates spoke about how hearing the boy's story during their training had shaped their understanding of what it meant to serve and protect. They carried with them not just badges and uniforms, but a deeper appreciation for the power of human connection. One afternoon, as autumn leaves began to fall, the boy received a special delivery at his home. It was a thick book filled with letters from people around the country who had been inspired by his story to perform their own acts of kindness. Each letter described how one person's compassion had created a chain reaction of goodwill in their community. The boy spent hours reading these stories with his parents, his face glowing with the realization that kindness truly could change the world. The original officer, who had received that first glass of lemonade on a hot summer day, had made it a personal mission to share the story with every new officer who joined the force. "Sometimes our biggest lessons come from the smallest teachers," he would say, pointing to the framed note that still hung in pride of place at the station. "This reminds us why we chose this profession, to help others and to be there when people need us." As the story continued to spread, it became clear that its power lay not in its uniqueness, but in its simplicity. It showed that anyone, regardless of age or position, had the power to make a difference. The boy's pure-hearted gesture had reminded an entire nation that the strongest communities are built one kind act at a time. The boy himself remained unchanged by all the attention, still the same kind-hearted child who had noticed someone in need that summer day. When asked about his famous act of kindness, he would simply shrug and say, "Everyone can be kind. You just have to start." His words, like his actions, carried the profound wisdom that sometimes the smallest gestures can create the biggest changes. And so, what began with a glass of lemonade and a plate of cookies continued to ripple outward, touching lives, changing perspectives, and reminding everyone that in a world that can sometimes seem divided, kindness remains the strongest bridge between hearts and communities.